What makes you think? What made you decide you wanted to do something with being more private and have yourself involved in let's say the vault issue and have something have some personal stake in your own protection?
Sure. It's a long story. I'll give you the highlights, I guess. But frankly, so the type of law that I practice and some of the things that I know. So I'm involved in like import-export compliance, trade law, anti-money laundering compliance. In the last decade or so, there's been a creep of, and really it started before that, right? Patriot Act, if you really want to go back to the big,
that's
the
really
big hammer, right? But it became increasingly obvious that that framework of the Patriot Act, of the Bank Secrecy Act, of FATCA, all of these rules and regulations that average Americans never have any interaction with, right? This exists.
At least they don't know they're having
until this exists in compliance departments and bureaucracies, and nobody knows about it.
I think a lot of people are getting hit with that now in their normal banking.
100%. There's people being debanked right now in the United States every day. So me having knowledge of that and seeing
you saw people being debanked.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I have friends who were
debanked. By debanked being you just canceled.
Yes, credit card processors who will refuse to do business with you. And banks who will remove you from their accounts, right? They'll just say, we can't bank with you. If you're lucky, they'll give you the money back right away. Sometimes they'll hold it for a period and then give it to you later.
And sometimes they won't even tell you why.
Yeah, they're not allowed to. That's Bank Secrecy Act, 100%. They will not tell you why. So I see that happening, and I know people directly who that has happened to. And if you're wondering, I mean, these are not like far right or left extremists or terrorists. Sure, that happens, but in reality, this is happening to average people. This is happening to gun shop owners. It's happening to sex workers. It's happening to people involved in like the tobacco industry or kratom, substances that are legal, right, but are still being shunned by the powers that be. It hasn't happened to the alcohol industry, but it happens to other ones.
It's also happening now in the U.S. and Canada. With people that are politically unsavory to the powers.
Absolutely, 100%. Those are the easy ones that are people are aware of, right? The political ones.
Yeah, but they're not. They're aware of extremes, but they're not aware of the fact that you just said if you're a gun store.
Yeah.
Legal gun store with all the licensing and everything, but all of a sudden they deem that your product is not good.
And the credit card processors, if you don't have a bank, of what I understand, the credit card processors are actually more lenient. The banks are the ones that are much more difficult. And the credit card processors won't be able to process for you if you don't go through a bank.
And they're acting on the behest of politicians.
Yes, yeah. So there's some evidence of that. But even if they're not taking marching orders from DC or wherever, the framework of these rules and regulations, the anti-money laundering laws, allows for banks to make decisions based on risk, and they have to mitigate their risk. That is the law. And risk has many different flavors and factors, and some of that is political. Some of that's political. Some of it's financial. They look at all that. If they think that you are a risk politically or financially, the bank has the right, or any financial institution has the right to debank you and remove you as a customer, because that is the law. The law is that they have to mitigate their risk, and those are factors that they're required to undertake.
Well, you also have those the social credit scores that are, although not official, and are well known about the Chinese government implementing them. They're actually doing it unofficially to most Americans.
Yes, and they are. I don't have a whole lot of evidence or anything that I could show of specific individuals like that, but we know 100% that is the fact for companies and corporations. So it's ESG scores.
Yeah,
that is what it is. So 100% this is being implemented on companies, both large and small businesses. There are some states that are pushing back on that, but it's trickling down, and it will eventually trickle down into individuals.
You're right. There are states like Florida that are pushing back.
Texas has to some extent.
But we have states like California and New York that embrace it.
Oh yes, radically. I mean, I think it was California. There's maybe
California. State. I know for a fact.
Yeah. Another
Yeah,
state,
I mean, it's
along with ESG scores. I mean, part of that ESG score is that you have to have certain representation on your board. This is coming from NASDAQ. This is, I don't think this New York Stock Exchange.
And we could just look at Disney.
Yeah.
The debacle of Disney.
So, and it's not just, they're not just targeting these big public corporations, because what happens is these mandates to the large public corporations then trickle down to suppliers and vendors. So if you sell to a company like Disney a widget, whatever, something that's totally irrelevant in the political scheme, their political and ESG mandates are going to trickle down to vendors. Now, instead of just having to make sure their board is made up of a certain composition, right, of color or race or whatever, now they got to make sure their vendors are. And that's absolutely what is happening and what will happen. It's very slow right now, but if you look hard enough, and you can pull up the documents and see that happening 100%.
All that being said, what do you think? How does that relate to what we're doing now and the alternatives that we're looking to do here in Panama?
Sure, yeah. So insulating yourself from those political machinations and the whims of the mob is important, right? And finding
there's a term called being anti-fragile.
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Because if you're anti-fragile, that means you can withstand the different attacks that come from an economy, from government, from all of these different forces that come at you because of the rules that they keep implementing. And I mean rules, not laws. Rules.
100%. Mandates, right? Excuse me, mandates that are not based on the rule of law, right? They just come up with it. Yeah, so the other term would be uncancelable, right? Anti-fragile, uncancelable.
They're one and the same, essentially.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So you want to move towards that, and it's shades of gray, right? It's not going to be binary. It's not going to be one day.
And then there's no perfect solution either.
Exactly. It's not. You're not going to flip the switch and be uncancelable. It is a gradation. You're moving from total dependence on the system to independence.
And so what are some of the steps that you can take to become more anti-fragile and protect yourself?
Yes, it's going to vary. But maintaining your own employment, right? Having your own business is the first step, I think, and finding ways to generate your own revenue and bring value to the world independent of the system that exists. That's the first step. In regards to financial, right? So finding alternatives to dollars, finding alternatives to stocks and markets, finding alternatives geographically, finding alternatives financially. Those are the things you need to think about, right? So maybe it's as simple as going and opening an offshore bank account somewhere and putting a couple $1,000s in, just a rainy day.
If you have the ability, you should do that.
Sure.
You should have multiple.
It's an easy step.
You should have a bank account in a different country.
Yes.
And I favor Panama.
Sure.
But you should have a bank account out of your own country, because if you are debanked, or if you do have the ability, if they come after you for not saying the right thing politically or having the wrong product, you at least have a bank outside of your country.
Yes.
You should think about that.
100%. Yep. And actually, it's gotten a little more difficult. But when I was younger and traveling, whenever I go on vacation, I would go and try to open a bank account. I got bank accounts.
Oh yeah, it's very difficult.
Serbia, and now it's really
That's
hard.
thanks to the United States.
Yes. You used to be able to do that. It was kind of fun, but not anymore.
Well, you can thank George Bush, because after the Patriot Act, he pretty much made it a very hard thing to do, and you have to become a lot wealthier to be able to do it. But you should all try to do it if you can.
Yeah. So that's one easy step, right? Second is think about private vaults, right?
Yeah.
And owning monetary assets and value outside of the dollar. It can be a lot of things.
Yeah, think about it.
It's very easy.
People talk about value. What is the difference if you think from value instead of fiat currency?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, value is something that can be retained, right? Can be traded. An asset that you hold that is transferable. It can be a lot of things to a lot of people. Historically, gold and silver, that's the gold standard, right? As they say, that's right. A+, right? From there, I mean, there are other types of commodities that could be it. I know some of my friends deal with like the platinum and palladium. It's
Platinum,
a little more,
copper.
I mean even some of the base metals as well. Some of that's a little difficult.
But gold, gold is really it's
universal.
Essentially it's money.
Yeah, it's universal.
Gold is actual money.
Yeah.
And silver is not the same as gold, but it's very good for people who don't have the kind of money to spend on gold. You should be buying some silver as a savings.
It's still
plan.
transferable. It's still wealth that can be used.
Absolutely. But gold, even J.P. Morgan, his famous saying, gold is money, everything else is debt. Everything else is credit.
Yep. Yeah. So that's one step in financial independence. Geographically, again, holding your precious metals, right? Obviously, you're going to keep it close to you to start, but as you start internationalizing, finding avenues and outlets to store your gold and silver or other assets.
That's a very important decision.
Yes.
When you look at Atlas, for example, you want to find a place that not only is stable and secure.
Yes.
But that you have control. You.
Yes.
Not me, not anyone else.
Custodial, exactly.
A bank has control over everything you've got.
Yep. Or even a depository, right?
Yes.
So, for example, like some of the depositories in the United States, even some of them are owned by some states. Those are typically custodial, right? They hold it in their ownership for you.
That's a huge difference.
Yes, 100%. And you really got to look at it. I'm not saying they all are like that, but there are a large portion of them that are. And that's essentially a bank just for alternative assets.
Yeah, most people don't realize that when they put their even a safe deposit box in a bank, most people don't realize that they no longer have ownership.
Yep.
Because the bank is now the custodial owner.
Yes.
And most people don't realize that when they put their money in the bank, they're not the owners of the bank of their money.
Yeah, 100%. So that's an important thing to understand when you're looking at that, even whether it's in the United States or outside of the United States.
Exactly.
I wasn't comfortable even using a depository or a vault in the U.S. That was not mine. That was not. That was custodial. That was not what I favored. I might as well, bury it in bury it in a park or something, right, in the middle of the night, as opposed to putting it there. So that's one thing that I look for. That I know that's what definitely attracted me.
Well, I just want to say one thing. Our clients that come to Atlas we don't give out clients' names.
Sure.
You're here because you wanted to do this. You're voluntarily saying that you're doing that. That you're here. But I just want to know that people to see that the clients at Atlas, unless they go forward and say they're part of Atlas, we don't disclose that.
100%. Yeah, we're good friends, and absolutely, I'm not afraid to say that I'm a client here.
Sure.
And because I'm not, I'm an attorney. I do business all over the world. My paperwork is in order, right? And I pay people to make sure it's in order.
Also, one big point. Most people don't realize this as well. The two things that the IRS doesn't require you to declare.
Yep.
Is what?
It's private holdings.
Private holdings, yes. If you have gold inside a private vault, they don't require you to declare that.
Outside of the U.S.
Outside of the U.S.
Yes.
They do require you to pay taxes on it.
Correct. Yeah. It does not evade taxes.
But you have the right to keep that undeclared.
Yes.
Now, if you put
a bank.
You put that in a bank, you have to declare it.
Correct.
By the IRS standards.
Yeah. And the rule is like $10,000, but I think in practice, from what I've seen, they report any amount.
Exactly.
Any time.
Exactly. It doesn't. There are no more rules on that.
Yeah, I think it's like immediately they report it, because I'm pretty sure even my bank accounts here in Panama, we filled. I forget the form name, whatever, but I'm pretty sure as soon as we opened it, we were under the threshold to start. But
yes.
They had us do it all right away.
That's because the banks are pushed and pressured by the United States to do more than the U.S. requires.
Yeah. So
as a matter of fact, you have a much freer behavior in the U.S. with the banks than the banking systems outside of the U.S. And it's kind of hypocritical.
That door is closing, though. I will say that. The U.S. adopted the Corporate Transparency Act, 2020, I think. We were all locked away. And now in the United States, so private companies now have a mandatory reporting requirement to the federal government for beneficial owners. So the ownership of your LLC has to be reported to the federal government now in the United States in a federal database. That never existed ever until a year ago. And it's a pain getting those.
Well, you're pointing out something also that there are movements in the U.S. and in Canada and in France to take away as much as they can from you.
Yes.
And so you have to start getting more and more intelligent about what you do. To do things legally, but you have to do them intelligently.
Absolutely.